Thank you, Jim. And Nick and Jason are back at the table with us, and joining us is Alvin Reed from STL Books, also does some work for stlmag.com. I don't know if Donnybrook would want to claim you here on our show or not.
Sure,
but
we're all part of the Channel 9 PBS family.
Okay, good. Let's pick up where we just kind of left off a little bit with the stadium, and let's just we've had a little bit of news on that this week. We've got well, I guess maybe we'd back up for just 1 second. But basically, help me out here. 4 cities and 3 teams in play. Somebody, if not 2 towns, are going to get left out when it comes to the NFL. This week, there's a plan to put 2 teams in 1 stadium in LA. There's a plan to take the Rams to LA. A little movement on both of those. And then also, we learned today that the St. Louis task force will be going to New York next week to present to the NFL our plan. Is that pretty well up to speed?
Yeah, I think so. That was a good summation, Casey. Congratulations.
That's where we're at.
Okay, great. So the next topic I'd like to discuss is So
I think there's some minor dramas.
and probably more to come. Fair?
It changes by the hour.
Yeah.
What are you hearing? Your ears are to the ground. Are we having NFL in this town or not?
Well, I can't rule out that a team will be playing in St. Louis in the future. However, I don't think that team will be the St. Louis Rams. I think they are going to at least attempt to move to Los Angeles, because that's why Stan Kroenke is building a $2 billion stadium, and he's not going to rent it out to 2 other teams. I think he wants his team to play in that stadium and be one of the highest valued franchises in the National Football League. I think the premise that you continue on in this scorched earth to build this stadium, which now includes possibly trying to not have a vote by the people of St. Louis on how to use the continuation of the bonds, until the National Football League promised me, and I'm not talking about a verbal promise, I mean an on-paper, ironclad promise that if you build the stadium, you will have a football team within, 4 years or something like that. I don't pursue it.
But that's not how negotiation works. It seems like they have the leverage. Is that fair? I mean, they get to call the shots.
Yeah, the whole vote thing is really perplexing, because they do have seen this bipartisan drumbeat that there should be some sort of votes either on a state legislative level or through a popular vote. And frankly, I think if there was a vote in the city of St. Louis, there's a decent chance it would pass, given if it was, the campaign was run well and people were convinced enough. But as Alvin mentioned, there does seem to be this kind of rush to not have any sort of vote on this bond extension, even though it's going to cost, a lot of money, essentially.
And I think, but they're doing that for a reason. They're doing it because they're wanting to show the NFL that they are so far ahead in this, that they have this financing there. But I think in the long run, it could be very detrimental to the entire process, because people are going to look at this and say, when we approved the Jones Dome, we didn't say, we meant that you could build another stadium too when this one isn't up to your liking. And that's going to be a problem, because I think if they had gone through the normal channels, you would get people on board in the long term. But they're playing their own game with the NFL, because they're trying to say, hey, we're so much further ahead than the people in LA or the people wherever else, and that's what's happening.
And especially when there's a specific ordinance that requires a vote for stadium funding, and St. Louis County Executive Steve Stenger pretty much said even if it wasn't required under this circumstance, there should be a vote anyways. And I'm wondering why Mayor Francis Slay hasn't adopted that same mentality. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, he's not done it, and I think he's going to. I mean, people are going to start saying, "What is your position on this?" I mean, they had come out with a statement about getting sued, and it was very carefully worded about, "We will vigorously defend this lawsuit," but it didn't necessarily say.
And in the same vein, they said, if the judge strikes it down, we'll obey that law too.
Right.
Just like newly elected alderman kind of said here, he wants to follow the law, and that's kind of what the mayor's office has said.
Right.
True. And what is the city, bringing to this project other than support for the project? I think that's basically all they've got right now.
Well, they say, I think they have to have the land in place, they have to have a design in place, and they have to have financing in place.
But I mean, that's the group that wants to build the stadium. But as far as Mayor Slay being able to come out and say, like, we're going to do this for you, or we're going to do that for you, like you said, that has not happened.
And this is where it comes. The politicians are elected by the people who they serve. They're not elected by the St. Louis Rams. They're not elected by Stan Kroenke. They're not elected by Roger Goodell. I mean, so some people are going to say, while we want to have an NFL team, we want you to be looking out for our interests, and that may include us saying if we want this or not.
And they also may think they're looking out for our interest in that there is not enough time to vote. Is that?
Well, that was the argument that Jeff Rainford told me and I'm sure David Hunt of the Post-Dispatch right before he got sued. And Jeff Rainford is the former chief of staff for Mayor Slay, who's now working as a consultant on the stadium project. And I think I remember reading in, I think, your paper that he was like surprised by this lawsuit between the Sports Authority and the city. And, you know, it's let's just say it's an interesting situation.
Because it was so surprising that everyone knew the Rams lease was coming up. That's been on the forefront for a long time. It's not like all of a sudden I was, oh my God, what are we going to do? We don't have a lease.
But I got to just ask, like, you know, I'm not from St. Louis originally. I'm from suburban Chicago. But is professional football so ingrained in this city's culture that people would be as upset about the Rams leaving as to say if the Cardinals
Is it ingrained
left?
in our culture, or do we want to be able to have this badge of honor around the country?
It's that, and also we would have lost 2 football teams in the grand scheme of things, a relatively short period of time. Since 1987, this would be the 2nd team that we had lost. Now, never mind, we, skyjacked a team from Los Angeles.
And I'm
brought
sure
them
people
here.
are afraid that, the events of Ferguson to a lot of people are a break in the right direction, and it's been very positive events. Others would say it's been negative press, and I'm sure they're worried that the headlines will read negative. First Ferguson, now Rams. We've seen our city in other newspapers already.
Go ahead,
It does
Nick.
get at the St. Louis's inferiority complex. They're always worried about those types of things, like, oh, we've lost that, then we've lost that, and there's always trying to, chase Chicago, and this whole idea that St. Louis was once a larger city than Chicago, and we've been going after that so long. But maybe sometimes people should sit back and think, we may not be a quote NFL city. Neither is Los Angeles, and they've done all right. And, Portland is not one. Austin, Texas is not one. Some of these places have become real hotbeds of innovation and of change, and having young people want to live there. They're going to Austin, Texas. They don't care if they have an NFL team or not.
Should we dump the Rams before they dump us and make it our idea?
Well, I think it's too late for that.
But sometimes it's about priorities. St. Louis is not as big of a city as New York City. It's what you do with your money and your time.
Well,
and St. Louis,
it would be a slightly different situation. I think a lot of teams relocate because the cities will just absolutely not be involved in building the stadium. And this could be a situation where, I don't know how this vote situation is going to go, but you could have a situation where the public side is on board and the owner leaves anyways because he wants to go to Los Angeles, and maybe the NFL looks favorably upon it and maybe tries to do like an expansion team like they did in Houston.
We might have a team
or something like that.
We might even, there's some thought we might have the Rams with a different owner. That's probably the longest shot of all.
Any of this, I think, is possible, but the biggest problem that St. Louis has is the fact that Stan Kroenke is building a $2 billion stadium and entertainment complex, and he has not asked for anything.
Yeah.
Which is what a lot of people bring up.
And
If you can
frankly,
afford to build it there.
And frankly, I haven't heard, a lot of people complain all the time about public subsidies for stadium, and now you have an owner who is basically paying for this entire thing himself, is taking all the risk, and I guess it's obviously being vilified here because they're taking the team away from the city, but it's a pretty different move than usual.
And the most powerful owners in the National Football League, be they, Robert Kraft, Jerry Jones, that crew, they are not going to tell this man he cannot move that team to Los Angeles because it doesn't work that way. We are not ham and egg in it. We are multi-billion-dollar owners, and Jerry built most of his stadium, and they're not going to tell him he can't move. Now, that doesn't mean some of the other owners might stand up
because
to
they
him.
like using LA as a blackmail device to build their other stadiums.
Right.
So you could see new stadiums in all these cities except LA.
Well, here's the thing. If the National Football League told Stan Kroenke he had to stay in St. Louis, he's not giving $250 million toward that new stadium. He's going to play in the Edward Jones Dome. So, okay, well, if I have to stay here, I can stay here for free and pay $25,000 a game, some ridiculously low amount of money. He's going to do that. He's not going to.
Yeah.
And, oh, by the way, in that loan they talk about, that other $150 million, it's a loan to him. He'd have to pay it back. So he's $400 million into a stadium, which, when the arbitrators, decided a few years back, he didn't have to pay a dime. Yeah. So all of a sudden, out of the goodness of his heart, he's going to be this philanthropic owner and take care of St. Louis. That's not happening.
He can afford it.